Welcome to the Nurturing Fathers Podcast, a show dedicated to helping men succeed at the most challenging and rewarding job they'll ever have, being a dad. Your hosts are Mark Perlman, the creator and founder of the Nurturing Fathers program, and his son, Corey Perlman, who facilitates the program at the Atlanta Federal Penitentiary and is also a father of 2 young children. It's time to add tools to your Nurturing Fathers toolbox. Mark and Corey, take it away.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Nurturing Fathers podcast. My name is Corey Perlman, and I'm here with my dear old dad, Mark Perlman.
Hello, everyone. Nice to be here. Nice to be anywhere.
Yes, it is. Well said. Well said. Very deep, Dad. Today's episode is about holidays and rituals and things that we put into place on a consistent basis with our children and probably from our own past experiences, and how important those are to creating a nurturing experience for our kids, right? I mean, it's very important.
Yeah, well, holidays, they're connected, but they're also separate. Holidays are kind of the prescribed ones: Christmas, New Year's, Kwanzaa, Thanksgiving, and how we can use those in a nurturing fathers context. Then there are the ones that we develop or create on our own as a family that I love, and we'll give some examples of those that have our own personal stamp on.
I think the reason these are so important and the reason that it's important that we spend some time on them is if we all think back to our most distinct memories as children, they often center around rituals. I think about the trips that we would take up to the North Georgia mountains, close to where I live now, but those are ingrained in my brain more than what happened last week. It's amazing.
What is it about those that stays with you or kind of stands out in your memory?
I mean, it's the deep connection, it's the car rides up, the experiences that I had with friends that I brought with me or, with my parents or my brother and things of that nature. And I think the biggest difference, Dad, is that it's opposite of the routine, right? It's something you don't do all the time. It was a once a year thing, whatever the case may be. So it was very different, unique, and special. It wasn't breakfast in the morning at the house. It wasn't dinner at night. It was going out to the North Georgia mountains in June of 1991 or whatever.
Right. And part of the beauty of it is that Mom and Dad weren't working. So all of our attention was yours. And we were just sharing an experience together. And we did do it in a way that I think gave a high priority to fun. Singing in the car and having music. So I remember one of your friends or Jamie's friends went with us, and he left his crayons in the very back ledge of the car. And they melted in the sun, and we had a pool of yellow and green and blue gook back there. So you never know what to expect. But part of that was being out in nature. I mean, I grew up in a city, but you guys lived in a sort of small town environment. But this was being out in the woods and having hills to climb and cold streams to jump into. We found a waterfall that we've since dubbed the Transformer that we would get under and let go on our shoulders. I'd hold you as a little tiny kid, and then as a bigger kid, you'd sit next to me on the rock. We'd have the waterfall, water coming down on our backs. Those just built wonderful memories and tremendous bonding. You also watched you stretch. You would come back from a 2-week trip to the North Georgia mountains changed. You had walked further and went in water that was colder and learned how to shoot a bow and arrow or something. And, it was just an adventure, very growthful.
It was a slingshot, but I'll take bow and arrow. I mean, it's much more dangerous.
Imagination.
But I think that where all of this stuff, I think about, like we mentioned, holidays too. And I was thinking about the connection between the story we just told with the North Georgia mountains and just anything like Thanksgiving or Christmas. And really, I think what it does is it's part of your history. And we as newer parents or people who are starting out as parents want to replicate that history. It's so important to us. So it's creating those rituals for our kids that will probably carry down. It's what we're going to give to our kids that they'll give to their kids. And I remember, so, one story we've mentioned is the North Georgia mountains, but going to holidays, it was big for my mom and our family. It was Thanksgiving. Everybody gets around the table. It was we always had as many people. We'd have strangers in our house, people we barely even knew that my mom would invite to Thanksgiving. It was just a really cool moment, that we'll never forget, that carried over. And then come Christmas time, a ritual that we instilled in our family with you, Dad, was we would go to these families' homes that you would get connected through a family servicing partner, and we would deliver presents to a family in need. And as young children, it was our opportunity to see and to give and to understand at the age that we were. It was hard to understand that not everybody had it as easy as we did. And this is a great thing for you guys to do. And we do it with our families today.
Yeah, and you would request it after a certain period of time. Are we going to do a family this year? Are we going to buy? So they would go out and buy with us the stuff, and we'd get a list from the mom, often a mother-led family, but we got a list of the things for each age kid that the kids want, and then our kids would help shop for that. We'd wrap them, and then we'd actually, instead of giving it to the social worker to go take it for us, we would insist on going ourselves, and we were welcomed by the family. We'd sit, bake bread, have a little some warm drink of apple cider or something, and watch them open their presents. And it was enriching and delightful for everybody. There was something just so good and sweet, and especially around the holidays, to give instead of just to get was a really huge part of that. And that reminds me of another whole quadrant of this. Corey and his wife, Jessica in particular right now, is very intent on taking their kids to certain groups like Moms Support Moms in Atlanta, where they volunteer their time and they collect money and they bring things that these kids and families could use, but they intermingle and they're very much a part of it. It's not done at arm's length. It's very involving. And it's great for the kids because kids get to play with all sorts of other people who they may not normally meet in a given day, and they've experienced the benefit of giving. I mean, we're all blessed with having enough money to have the nice bikes and things that our kids need and these kids need, but to give to others is such a unique blessing that they get that experience and realize that it's really important.
So the context that just dawned on me in my head of where all these things tie together too is the things that we want to instill in our kids, you can't just do one off. And so everything we just talked about so far, so like giving. So if we just every once in a blue moon said, hey, we're going to go to Target and buy some stuff, I don't think that would be instilled in the DNA of our kids. But because literally once a month, guaranteed, no matter what, every single month for the rest of her childhood, Talia is going to go and serve with her mom, I think that's going to be instilled in her. Same thing with going to the woods every year. Every single year. Now, as an adult, the woods are extremely important to me because it was instilled in me as part of a ritual. I would say the same thing about your religious and spiritual type of things that we do. If you build that in, you take that into a routine or a ritual with our kids that's important to you, gosh, I can't imagine a better way for you to instill that. You know, going to church every Sunday, going to synagogue every Saturday, having a huge event for your 13-year-old bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah. You know, these are rituals that will carry on because they're important to you and therefore become important to your kids.
Yeah. And I remember, since we weren't connected to a particular synagogue as Jewish people, we created a ritual of bar mitzvah when they turned 13 that had several parts of it. One was a big circle, a gathering of friends and families and neighbors. And the grandfather helped them read a Jewish blessing and go through the bar mitzvah rituals. And then we ate Jewish and ethnic type of food, and we danced and we celebrated. And it was a delightful time. And one thing I did for both of my sons, which is unique, is I have this men's group that's been together for many, many years. And this circle of men who knew my sons from the day they were born up through this age of 13, we sat around with the young man and we told memories, funny episodes, wishes for the future, words of wisdom if we had some, whatever we wanted to share. And we nurtured that young male at the age of 13 with a group of elder men who cared about him and who wanted to share some of their caring. And one of the things I think we've lost to some degree in our society is rites of passage, especially for boys, where we used to be welcomed into the tribe or taken out to camp for a week or two, or whatever that ritual of welcome to the manhood is, has not been preserved or protected the way it was. So we felt the need to replicate that in some way. And we used the bar mitzvah as a way of doing it with the circle of men.
Yeah, that goes to that point of what was really important to you, I think, was showing me at the time that, you can have this circle of men in your lives, and it's important to have your tribe, or your people that you can go to as your men's group. And that's something that I'll carry on with Milo too. And I do think to some degree that's why I think it's important. Some of the guys out there might be thinking to themselves like Boy Scouts, Cub Scouts. That's exactly what that is. That's
Great.
You guys connecting with each other and creating that ritual for you and your son, or potentially your daughter with 4-H or Girl Scouts and things of that nature. That, all of these things I think come together and instill those things that we're looking to do. So being super intentional about these rituals and these holidays and making them the way you want them and being as consistent as possible.
Yeah, and they all show a sense of community, including birthday celebrations. I mean, we had them at the beach because we live in beach community, but everybody came out with their Frisbees, with their bathing suits, with their food. Young, old, medium, we just filled the place up with community, and it was centered around the one young boy or girl whose birthday it was. So I think the community part of it began a shaving cream ritual. We squirted shaving. So it just continues to grow and be creative. But the important thing in that, I think, is community and letting the child feel the center of that community.
And here's one thing to think about for the guys that are listening too. Make sure your voices are heard. As I think about some of these things and a lot of the rituals and holidays that are created, and not for any negative reason, but a lot of them are created by the mom, and so what I'd like for us to do in this particular session is for all of us to think about the rituals and holidays that we had as children, or even that we didn't have, that are important to you guys, and see if there's anything that's not happening on a consistent basis that's really important to you that you'd like to start doing with your kids. And I would encourage you to do that.
So we had one more creative one that I will share with you with some degree of embarrassment, because the neighbors and friends around us watching this were annoyed, and you just couldn't quite grasp. We created for each of our two sons, the older one, Jamin, younger one, Corey, a Corey Appreciation Day. And this was separate for birthdays, separate for everything. He was off from school, and we created the day around age-appropriate activities, whatever was fun for him, the food that he liked most, the dessert that he liked most. And we would just use the day to continually infuse appreciation for who he was and what he was good at and what he was growing toward. And it was just a day focused on loving and appreciating the fact that he was here and he was ours. And you tell me what it was like to receive that, but I just know that we gave it with great humor and love. And there was always a Corey Appreciation Day each year, and there was a Jamie Appreciation Day.
There was. I think fewer for Jamie just because he was harder to... They were great. I think that what they instilled in us as kids is that you catch us doing good. So I remember that you would definitely tie them to a continuous improvement in some area that I think we were all working on, whether it be grades or behavior or something to that effect. So it was the ultimate example of catching us doing good. And what Jess and I have sort of turned that into, we don't necessarily call it Appreciation Day, but what we call it is Yes Day, which we try to the extent that we can to say yes to anything and everything that each of our kids ask for in a particular day. And it becomes very interesting, as you could probably imagine.
A little bit of a high-risk proposition.
It is. So sometimes it turns into maybe, or maybe next year. We talk a lot about like withdrawals, right? Deposits and withdrawals. And those are big paydays, if you will, of deposits in our souls and our bodies, and very, very good. So I commend you for creating that. It was really cool.
Yeah. And I appreciate our religious institutions of all kinds that give us these communities and rituals. They are important and certainly feel supportive of that. But some of these are secular, and just as you can hear, family vacations and family special events.
And don't forget, cultural rituals, which I think are pretty cool too, in different cultures and things that you see in different communities and things that are equally as important, that if you find in our day and age are starting to go away with technology, or how neighborhoods are, not the same anymore, but get them back, like family weekend barbecues or neighborhood barbecues, or, when you guys all get out into the road together and sit in the sidewalk, and watch cars go by like you used to do, but things like that. There's no reason we can't bring that back if that was really something that was important to you as, in your neighborhood or in your community or your culture.
Sounds great. And if any of you listening have ideas, creative suggestions of what your family does for a ritual, please share it. We would love to hear some feedback and also hear some of your creative ideas.
Well, that's it, man. That was a short but sweet sort of journey down rituals and holidays. And again, like Dad said, if there's anything that you'd love to add to this or something we didn't think about or would want to mention, we're at nurturingfathers.com. And you can also find us on Facebook at fb.com/nurturingfathers, and anywhere where podcasts can be found, you can find this podcast. So thanks again, and we'll see you on the next one.
See you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Nurturing Fathers podcast. Have questions or comments? Join the conversation at facebook.com/nurturingfathers or email us at nurturingfathers@gmail.com.